Welcome back to season 2 of A Game Media. And today we are kicking off A Game Talks with a very, very special guest. This man is the CEO and the founder of an organization that has 1,000 plus partners, alumni of around 20,000, as well as he's created a community of 1,000,000 plus people. 1,000,000. None other than the CEO and founder of Product School, Carlos. Welcome to the A Game Studio.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
Awesome. And then for those of you who are tuning in for the very first time, it's your boy Adi. I'm going to be hosting today's interview, and let's go from there. So yeah, Carlos, let's get this started. So what was Carlos like growing up? I love to start there. Would you say Carlos was the troublemaker, was always out and about with his friends? Were you the quiet kid, who just loved to read, just kind of, and anything in between? I'd love to learn a little bit more about who Carlos really was as a kid.
How much time do we have?
You want?
Well, I'll keep it short, but I was a rebel. I think I'm still a rebel. I grew up in Spain, in Madrid. And I think I don't come from a family of entrepreneurs. My dad was a doctor. My mom was a lawyer. So I also don't know where the gene came from, but I was always creating trouble, always trying to do things. I love sports. I love people going out. So I was always trying to, get out of the building and do things. So anyway, I started computer science because I was good with numbers. I like video games. And honestly, I also didn't even have more information. So, I just, my dad was like, someone has to be a doctor, but I freak out when I see blood. So, and I can't be a lawyer. So I decided to just take that path and try to become an engineer. Thing is, soon enough in my career, I realized that I was good enough with coding, but I just didn't want to spend the rest of my life coding. However, I wanted to leverage my technical background in a different way, even though I had no idea how or where. So I was like, okay, sorry, kid, you signed up for this, so you have to be an engineer and then a senior engineer, and then, that's it. You have to work based on what you study, basically. At least that was the mindset in Europe. So back in the day, I decided to go to business school. I was like, okay, I want to try something radically different. And I was always in love with technology, with Silicon Valley. So I saved that all my money. I started working very early in my career. When I was 17, I was a lifeguard. I had every type of job you can imagine. I kept all my money to invest in education. I never bought a car, never bought a house or anything. So I managed to get a master's degree in UC Berkeley, and I paid for it myself. So I don't have any loans, which I'm knocking on wood. That was really good for me. And but I had the same problem. I realized, hey, there's a lot of books that I'm reading and I'm meeting a lot of cool people and whatever, but in reality, this feels a little bit too high level. I still want to get my hands dirty. I want to play with tech. I want to kind of build technology businesses or be related to tech somehow. And I'm not really taking any single class on product management, digital marketing, UX design, or some of the digital skills that a lot of us use on a daily basis. At the same time, there was a lot of other engineers in my business school class that were thinking business, which was really refreshing for me because where I come from, I was kind of the only one who didn't want to be an engineer. And so, okay, there's a problem here. I'm not the only one. Business school is not the solution, definitely. And at the same time, there's a lot of business folks that come from consulting, finance, marketing, and other backgrounds that also want to get their hands dirty, but they're feeling very intimidated because they didn't know how to code. So they were like, okay, these engineers might be so weird. They're using dark screens and we don't know what they do. We need to come up with ideas and they'll do them for us, like type of thing, which is absolutely not true. So anyway, I kept my career. I worked in a couple of startups, but most importantly, I built 3 companies. Always in education. I think I love and hate education, to be honest.
I agree with that. A lot of great information there. I just wanted to kind of take a step back, right? I think, so Spain, right? I think Spain, if someone like me, I do want to visit Spain at some point, once COVID, dies down. But kind of what is it like, living and growing up somewhere like Spain, right? Because we see like the tourist perception of Spain, right? Whereas you kind of live there, for a lot of your adolescence. So kind of just give us a little bit of feedback on, what was that like? And, kind of how did you navigate, those hard decisions, right? Because like you said, you grew up in a household that had, traditional career paths, like lawyer, and, doctor. Like those are a lot of common career parents seek out for their kids. So yeah, just talk to us about, kind of what was Spain like and how did you ultimately find your way to, stick to your guns amidst, the peer pressure from your family?
Yeah, well, it wasn't easy because I didn't really have role models. There were not other entrepreneurs near me. In my school, nobody really wanted to start a company. In my house, nobody wanted me to take the risk. Everyone wanted me to get a safe job, buy a house, be
Right.
happy. So I did everything myself. I think it's just my inner curiosity. I was always looking for what's next and what's out there. And I was part of an accelerator program way before the term accelerator was popular. It was basically something that a bank put together to say, okay, we're looking for young people to come up with ideas, and I signed up for it. So very early in my career, I was always doing things outside school. And the prize was to have a trip to Silicon Valley. So I won. I was the winner of the young entrepreneur in Spain, and the prize was to come here. And I came here. They gave me a whole tour around Silicon Valley. It took me to Google, Stanford, Berkeley, and I was like, oh my God, this is absolutely amazing. I hope I can come back. So that kind of planted a seed for me to kind of start looking on Google. And literally, I did everything on Google. Figured out visas, figured out application process, how to pay for university, finding university, everything. And that was also, I think, the fact that I had to suffer so much and struggle to really figure out education is what inspired me to then start education companies.
Wow. No, shout out to Google. I think, we all can't go a day or even an hour without Google. So, we appreciate Google for what they do. And so, yeah, no, I think with that, right. So you got the inspiration for Silicon Valley in the USA, right? So kind of ultimately, how did you make that pitch to your parents? Right. Like kind of how did you explain, hey, I need to do this for me. Like, this is something that I'm really passionate about and I need to do this to grow. Kind of, was that a hard conversation, to leave the place that you grew up around friends and family? Or was it more you were excited to start this new adventure in America?
It was very scary because I didn't know anybody who did it before.
Wow.
So I was literally jumping off the boat and saying, I want to do this, but in reality, I'm not sure. And my parents gave up. At some point you keep repeating the same message, like, I love technology, I love Silicon Valley, I want to play in the MBA of technology. That at the end of the day, I was able to afford it. So I was like, hey, dad and mom, like, I'm not asking for anything. Just give me a vote of confidence. I did the entire process myself, like, without letting them know. And when I received literally the letter from Berkeley, I was like, hey, it's here. I paid for it. Like, I'm going. And of course, they supported that. And they said, well, if things don't go well, you always have a home here. But I was very clear that I wanted to go there with an open mind to really explore all possibilities. And it wasn't easy, because it's not the same to be a student than to be an entrepreneur or an employee. You, in addition to all the things that you have to do to make money, you also have to figure out your visa, which wasn't easy. Maybe that's for a different conversation.
Right. No, definitely. No, of course. I think that's always a scary leap of faith. I think for me, even going to college like 30, 40 miles away from home, that was an adjustment. So I can't imagine, coming to a whole new country. So, kudos to you for making that happen. Right. And like you talked about the entrepreneurial bug, right? Kind of, and with that kind of, so where was like so I know you talked about you had this interest in education, right? But it's like, I think I can do this better in a different way. Like, was there like a light bulb moment, or was it just, it naturally just kind of happened? You met some people and, the rest was history.
I think it was an evolution, and it's always been based on my own problems.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, my first company was literally organizing events inside universities just because I didn't like most of my teachers. So I literally went out there to look for movie directors, athletes, business people. I mean, like, hey, I'd love to have you in my classroom and just tell us a little bit more about what you were doing when you were our age. And funny enough, a lot of the people said yes. So I had to learn kind of cold emailing and sponsorships and all of that. It was more of a nonprofit, but that it started something there.
Right.
Then next company in education was a next step. We created something more like Udemy or YouTube, like a video marketplace where anyone could create content, and
Right.
of course anyone could consume it and learn it. Like, I was a big believer in lifelong learning. I don't understand why, one, we are supposed to be full-time students until our mid-20s and then full-time employees for the rest of our lives. I never got that. So I think we can get it all at the same time. And the second thing, I never understood why only full-time teachers can teach us something. I always believe that best teachers are actually practitioners, and some of them don't even need a degree to teach something, because there's actually no degree for certain things. So that was the inspiration behind it. And I started that second company. And then Product School, which is the current company that I started 6.5 years ago, it's almost a culmination of all these things. I've spent a lot of time in an engineering school and a lot of time in a business school, and none of those places really were the solution for me. Most of the stuff that I've learned pretty much on the street, on the go, by building companies. So at some point I decided to create a school which is a hybrid in between those two, engineering and business, that gets the best out of both worlds and hopefully can help people in a much more efficient way. All of the trainings that we do are online on weeknights and weekends, because one, you can keep up with your life, and two, we're able to attract the best instructors. All of the people who teach at Product School are actually not teachers. They are product leaders who keep their full-time jobs at Uber, Google, Netflix, Amazon, and some of the best tech companies in the world.
Wow. The reason why I'm smiling, Carlos, is because, I resonate with those statements, like you said. I just find that ironic how we are raised through the system to, learn till our mid-20s, and then it's okay to be content. I think as a personal development junkie, you're preaching to the choir. I think we should be lifelong students. And like you said, it's best to learn from someone who's doing what they're preaching. Again, that's not any slight against our educational system, but it's like, if you have a chance to learn from Michael Jordan while he was in his prime, I think anyone would, right? And that goes to say for anything. So that's great. And I guess before Product School, right, I guess one thing I wanted to touch about was like, for the first two companies in your entrepreneurial journey, right, were there like any lessons, kind of any hard losses that you had to kind of experience to kind of help shape and mold who you were as an entrepreneur before you were able to hit the ground running with Product School? Or was it more like, it's kind of, you always viewed it was part of the process, nothing really stood out to you like that?
Honestly, it's been such a crazy journey. I had no idea what I was doing. My first company, it wasn't really a company. It was just more of a side project that I did for fun when I was a student, but that helped me learn a lot about real life. So, that wasn't really a business, it was more of a non-profit. The second one, which is the first official company, I raised a bunch of money, like from investors in Europe, in Latin America, and then in Silicon Valley, especially an accelerator program called 500 Startups. And that was the real deal. Like we grew really fast. We built an international team. And at the same time, I think I made a lot of mistakes. I tried to kind of teach everything to everyone, basically, and grow very fast, and then try to figure out how to make money down the line, which is it's not my style. So it didn't really work out the way I wanted. So with Product School, I decided to do the exact opposite. I was like, I'm going to start very small with my own resources. I'm going to focus on my customers. I don't want to start pitching PowerPoints to investors who will never use my product. I want to be the product. I'm going to teach very small cohort of people. I'm going to make sure I can help them get product management job. And I don't care if my company doesn't become a unicorn. I'm just going to be happy. And that was the definition of happiness for me. Like I just want to be the owner of my own destiny. And then, of course, I have ambition. So I want to see how far it can go. But at the beginning, it was, I don't need to raise money. Let me just do it myself and see how it goes. Of course, 6 years forward, I can't help it, so I treat everything as a product, and we are, as you mentioned at the beginning, over 1 million members, incredible community of alumni with over 20,000 people from around the world. Some of the instructors who teach with us are the VP of product at Netflix, VP of product at Spotify, head of product at YouTube, like incredible people that I only saw, like in magazines or in TechCrunch articles. So I obviously try to stay very humble. And the principles are always the same. We are all people. We are trying to create a platform to allow the very best in the world to teach a little bit of what they know. And then people who are really hungry about learning to have the opportunity to do it without putting their life on hold.
Wow, I'm fired up. You saw me on the dream right there. No, I appreciate that. That was great. I guess kind of my first question for you there, right, on the Product School side was like, is there like a big early win, like, that stands out to you? Like, who was your first customer? I guess more from like a company sponsorship that really stood out to you. Was there like, if you could describe, like, what was that feeling when you landed that big win, and kind of who was that, if you don't mind sharing?
I never, ever forget. I don't think any entrepreneur can forget the moment they close the first deal and they get a check, So her name is Sonia, and she's incredible. She is now VP of product at a high growth startup, but she wasn't a PM when she started, and we met in San Francisco. She was literally an early adopter. I only had a website, and she emailed me and was like, "Hey, Carlos, I saw you in a couple of events. I read some of your content on discussion forums like what, and I would like to sign up for your first class." And I was like, "Of course." And I was the instructor for all the first classes, so I remember I have a relationship with the very first 100 students because we spent a lot of hours together, but especially Sonia, because she was literally the first one in October of 2014. that is a very special case for me. And then of course, after that, as there's been thousands of alumni, and then we also have corporate clients, because some large organizations decided to first start sending a few of their employees to our B2C classes, but at some point when the volume is big, they want us to go in-house and train some of their employees. And so we've done pretty big trainings for companies like Walmart, Uber, Northwestern Mutual, and other Fortune 500.
That's awesome. No, I think, again, like what you guys are doing is great. And I'm really honored to even be able to showcase what you guys are doing. Right. But I guess my next question was, I think in any entrepreneur's journey, right, they have like a support system, they have like a board of directors or some kind of mentorship, right? When you were on this journey to building Product School in the early days to help you get through like, that early growth stage or kind of those trial and error times, or do you feel like, again, you kind of just figured it out as you went, and the rest is history?
I believe in mentorship, and I still have mentors. I believe this, if you look at not only business people, but athletes, everyone needs a mentor, right? You mentioned Michael Jordan or LeBron James. They all have coaches and mentors, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So yes, definitely. I had incredible instructors in traditional education system who continued helping me as mentors after that, and other professionals in that helped me. So definitely, more than one actually. I like to surround myself with a bunch of people, and one of the things that worked for me in that regard is to really go for quality and not quantity. Of course, we can have coffee meetings with a lot of people, right? But you really want to have a deep relationship with someone, and you have to invest time for them to get to know you, for you to learn more about them. You have to be, or at least what's for me is to be vulnerable, to really showcase what's not working, right? Because if I just show up and give you a spiel about how we're killing it, in reality, what the mentor will say, well, whether you need help, right? So it takes time, and at the same time, I don't think all the mentors are forever. You grow I grow as a person, and the business needs something different in different stages. So I think it's very healthy to revisit who are your mentors. Some of them will be forever, absolutely, but it's also fine to recognize what are different parts that you need help with, and try to get them in the form of a mentor, in the form of an advisor, as a consultant, a full-time employee. I think especially within education, we need to invest in ourselves as well, and continue learning.
I completely agree. And, I think that's kind of something, I think a lot of people face that challenge, right? Where it's like, not to say that you're better than that person by any means, but it's also like, as you're growing, you change people, you become a different person. You become a better version of yourself, right? You need to continue to sharpen your tool set. And so it's not like not like the person is bad by any means. It's just like, you outgrew what they can help you on, and you're kind of on to the next thing. So that's really great there. So now, you can talk to any person, they'll have a different answer. But from the source itself, how technical does a product manager need to be, in your opinion? I think the spectrum ranges vastly, so it'd be great to get your thoughts on this.
Absolutely. Well, if you asked me this question when I started Product School 6.5 years ago, the answer would be different. Mm-hmm. So I think this is an evolving narrative. Back in the day, being technical was way more important than it is today, I think. Mm-hmm. Definitely being technical is important, and it will always be, because if you are working in technology, you need to speak technology.
Right.
And if you come from an engineering background, you have a leg up, because you already kind of get that respect from your engineers, you know them and whatnot, but it's definitely not the only background. You can be a PM coming from a business background, design, and many other types of background. If you want, we can talk about it later. So my answer is, I hate to say that, but it depends, and I'm going to break it down for you. If you are in a very, very technical company, let's say you're building AI algorithms, right, or a voice recognition machine, like, you definitely need to be technical, because your product is highly technical. Now, if you're working on, let's say, an e-commerce website or a specific marketplace mobile app and others, I think you need to be technical enough to be able to have a conversation with your engineers at every single level, to really understand how you can be helpful. What is technical debt? Some of the trade-offs you have to make, but you don't need to tell them how they have to do certain things. So obviously, if you come from an engineering degree background, that's fantastic. If you don't, you definitely need to make the effort to be technical enough, yes, to be dangerous, but not too dangerous because you'll never be as good as an engineer in engineering. And that's not the point either. Like, we get some students that come to us saying, I want to be a product manager, but I've heard I have to be an amazing engineer first. Let me go and study engineering. Like, no. Like, you can take a shortcut. And there are many other things that PMs do that they also need to know. So as a generalist, which is PMs are generalists, you just need to know enough about engineering, design, business, because you are in the middle and just by default, you're never going to have enough time to go too deep in anything.
Thank you, for the insight. I'm fairly new to industry. I think the way I like to describe it is like you're the orchestrator of a symphony, right? It's like you ultimately have to know how to get, from point A to point B, whether that's, improving a new iteration, coming up with a net new product or whatever the case is, right? You're kind of the point guard or, the leader in that sense. So I think that's kind of how I look at it. But thank you for that. How product management is such a multifaceted art. And you have so many people from so many different backgrounds that, are trying to break in or are in product, right? Is there any interesting like student stories that stand out to you? One that maybe had a really unorthodox background that you were kind of able to help break in, or kind of like, is there any fascinating, interesting stories that come to mind?
I have a lot, but I'm going to tell you one good friend. We became friends. His name is Daniel. He was a lawyer.
Oh, wow.
And I remember this case because I don't get a lot of lawyers who want to become PMs. And he came to the office like full suit up in San Francisco. And like, hi, Carlos, I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a product manager. And like, cool, tell me more about it. And like, he was just a curious man. And he was burnt out from the typical law firm life. And he just wanted to explore something new. And it's like, that's totally fair. So he put in the time. And he actually ended up working he's now a director of product at Rocket Lawyer. Wow. And I thought, this makes so much sense because how many lawyers do you know who also understand tech and a little bit of coding? So he was able to find a really cool PM job at a legal tech firm. And I think that's a good example for a lot of people out there. You can apply to your industry. You don't have to be, and I come from an engineering background, I have the utmost respect for engineers, but you don't have to be an engineer in order to be a great PM. The same way, you don't need to be a lawyer to be a great PM. You don't need to have an MBA to be a great PM. There are many things you have to have, and we can talk about it, of course, because I don't want people to think this is easy and, oh yeah, because I just don't have any of these things Carlos told me, I'm going to start applying to all the jobs and they're going to say yes. That is definitely not true. But there is things that you can learn regardless of what you studied in college many years ago.
Got it. Now that you mentioned it, right, kind of from what you've seen, I'm sure you've worked with a lot of product managers, or kind of a lot of people in this product space. What would you say are like the top 3 things that you feel like take a product manager who's good by any means to great? Like kind of what makes the exceptional people in product the way they are, from either a tangible or intangible perspective, in your opinion?
Mm-hmm. So I would break this down between like junior PMs or people who are individual contributors versus maybe group PMs and above, people who are managing product managers. So they are more of a people manager at that point. So for individual contributors, especially at the beginning, it's important to acquire key hard skills to get the job done. Because yes, I understand that soft skills are important, and leadership, communication and storytelling, I get it. And it definitely will serve you well, especially as you grow in your career. But at the very beginning, you need to know how to create a roadmap, how to create user stories, how to create wireframes, how to do a usability testing, like some of the jargon that we use as PMs in order to really get the job done and earn the respect from your people. Now, so that would be my answer, especially at the very beginning. And forget about coding. I mean, if you know coding, fantastic, that would help you. But I think now there's so much technology out there that allows PMs to be more productive and kind of have a visual layer on top of all the code. These no-code, low-code tools are allowing people really do powerful stuff without having to go under the hood. So data visualization is critical. Obviously, whiteboarding and all of that. But like, again, you don't need to go 3 levels down to really know what's going on. So that would be my take for aspiring or junior PMs. Now, for group PMs and above, it's all about soft skills. At some point, if you really want to grow in your career, you need to let go. You need to empower others to do the things that you think you are great at. And I know it's hard. I mean, I'm guilty myself. It still takes me time to delegate because I'm not technically a full-time product manager anymore, but I'm the CEO and I love product. And I still, see myself in the kitchen sometimes, but it's definitely important to delegate, to empower others and over-communicate. And by over-communication, what I mean is you can just pack your calendar with the things that are important to you. Like, oh, I need to work on this, I need to work on that, I need to do my one-on-ones and this. Yeah, all of that is great. But I think it's also important to have some buffer time for the unpredictable. And spoiler alert, you're never going to meet your deadline. So Uh,
All the
you
managers
know,
out there,
I think that having some wiggle room there to read the air, to know when someone needs an extra meeting, when two people just need to talk one-on-one, when like, in general, like when you need to just do whatever it is, organize a party for someone or do something. I think it's important to save some time for that because you're going to be working with a lot of specialists. And I don't think you were hired. And that requires some time, analysis, and conversations. And it can't be as an afterthought. So I know it sounds maybe too high level, but I definitely encourage people to start by looking at their calendar. Be like, is there, all the meetings that I have are absolutely necessary? Is there anything that I can say no to so I can allocate some time just to think or just to see what's going on so then I can tackle it?
wow, that's gems on gems. We appreciate the golden nuggets, Carlos. I guess my next question there, right, is I think as human beings, I think it's hard, especially now because I think time is going by so fast, right? So I can only imagine, as a busy PM, right, or kind of as a leader, like there's times where it's like, you look at the calendar, you're like, dang, where did the time go? So I guess kind of when you're in the trenches, right, of like a 2 week sprint or whatever the case is, like kind of what advice do you have for those people to remember the bigger picture? Right? Because it's like I'm sure when people thought of becoming a product manager, it wasn't so much to handle sprints or backlogs, things like that. It was more to like create a product or something tangible that people actually enjoy or solves a problem, right? And I think, I guess my question is, how do you balance like the end goal from the day to day in your experience from what you've seen?
Yeah, well, let's start by saying that when there is an emergency and something needs to get done, it's go time. So you roll up your sleeve and you do whatever you have to do to ship, and that is not negotiable. I think that applies to everybody, CEO and everybody in between. But obviously, that cannot be sustainable because at the end of the day, you're going to burn out. You're going to burn your team out, and you're not going to have a clear vision for what's next, other than what's next tomorrow.
Right.
So I think there's a big misconception between product management and project management.
Right.
And project management is more tactical. It's actually what you described is literally taking care of the day to day, making sure you can correct deviations. You are keeping your resources executing according to time, quality, and budget, right? Like the standard definition. And that's not just for tech, that's for everything. And that's fine. And there's a part of project management included in product management. But product management is more strategic. So it's also about connecting people across different parts of the organization. It's really about looking ahead and know what's going to happen in a few quarters, even if it's not exactly what you have in your plan, but like someone needs to kind of keep everyone aligned. That's why you were hired. Otherwise, just work as a project manager. And of course, in startups or small organizations, you may not have that luxury. And I can see a lot of product managers who wear multiple hats, and that's fine as long as you know that. Like if you know that you're in a small team, it's extremely agile, and you are doing project management and product marketing and product management, and that's fine. But at some point, if you really want to scale your product, you are going to need to have people who are thinking more long term than just short term.
I completely agree. And now you talked about scale, right? Kind of now, as a CEO, right, of a booming kind of growing company, kind of how do you balance that? Like you said, you're guilty of wanting to be in the kitchen, but also I'm sure your time and others can agree is best served, thinking from a tactical standpoint for what's next for product school, what do we want to do and why? So I guess how have you learned to kind of cope and like kind of balance the two of like, obviously you're kind of like the heart of the company, right? Because, it's your vision you've brought to reality, but it's like, also you have other people's interests in mind as well now moving forward.
Definitely, and I'm still learning in that regard. Obviously, I come a long way, but I think the best way I've learned this is by failing. I've made so many mistakes. I've delegated so many times so late that like that makes you realize next time that okay. And in general, for me, the best way to really delegate is to hire awesome people. And that's the actual part that I'm not delegating yet. I'm very involved in recruiting across the board, because if you make those decisions right, you really hire people that can take things to the next level. You don't have to worry that much about that. They are actually going to tell you what are the things that they need and how they are going to do certain things. So that is critical, and that's a part that I'm still very involved. And a lot of CEOs, they also like to be involved in the recruiting piece. I have an amazing head of product, and obviously we've been working together for many years. I think for me now, at this stage in life and stage in my career, it's all about building culture. And this is a word that I didn't care much in the beginning. I was like, oh, this is, like fluffy stuff, but it's so important, because at the end of the day, when you're working with a lot of smart, awesome people, they're not going to have problems finding another job. And that's the reality of things. And that's the type of people that I like.
Right.
The ones that know that they have options. So how do you really keep them inspired? Well, you can't just fake it. You just don't show up and give them a mega speech about the future of product management.
Right.
You really lead by example, and you are there for them, and you let them co-create with you, because it's not just, oh, Carlos is saying this or that. So long story short, for me, it's all about building culture, and now building a remote culture, which is, a whole new ball game.
Definitely. Let's talk about that, right? Because I know you guys do offer online classes, but I'm sure a huge part, like a significant part of the culture you talked about at product school was, having these global locations and people kind of being able to go in person, right? So kind of, I guess, how has that adjustment been, kind of, again, leading a company and kind of, just kind of adjusting on the fly, right? Because no one planned or prepared for this, right? So talk to us about that.
We've been lucky in that regard because we were already a remote company before the pandemic started, and all of our online courses were delivered. So all of our courses were delivered online before the pandemic. So in that regard, we've been kind of business as usual. Of course, there are always adjustments that you need to make here and there. But in general, like for me, building a remote team, which is something that started very early, was done out of necessity. I couldn't afford to hire the talent that I wanted in Silicon Valley. It's just too expensive. So I had an unfair advantage by coming from Europe, especially in Spain. Like, this incredible talent, and such an international hub. There are a lot of people there that they fall in love with the country for so many good reasons, and they just want to stay and hang out, and it's much cheaper. So I was able to attract really, really good talent for a fraction of the price compared to what San Francisco would pay at the very beginning. And then, of course, you need to continue diversifying. You can just hire everybody in one location. So it's a work in progress. And now all of these things that I just said used to be a competitive advantage. It's now a commodity because everyone is working remote. Everyone figured out that you can get the best talent in so many other parts of the world. It's not just your neighbor. And so it's a constant race to what is next. How can I make sure that we go beyond the happy hours and beyond the let's create a channel on Slack to talk about stuff that is not about work, right? So for me, it's really spending time with people. I know every single person that we've hired. We are around 60 people full-time. This is not including instructors. And I've participated at least in one step of the hiring process with them, and not just in the hiring process, but like the onboarding, some of the activities that we do together. It doesn't scale. And obviously, when we are bigger, we have to figure something out. And I'm obviously empowering others to represent and co-create that culture with me, because this is not Carlos School anymore. This is Product School, and it's much bigger than myself. But like really spending time and thinking a lot about culture, it's for me the only way I can scale a remote organization.
Got it. No, thank you. I think it's always cool to hear that insight of people, the decision makers, right? Because, obviously these are not easy decisions by any means, right? And so obviously, we look to leadership to help make those decisions. So it was great to get that insight, just a couple more questions, as we're coming closer to the end. The first question was, what's the vision for Product School? Carlos, like, where do you see Product School in the next, couple of years, 5 years or so? If you could lay that out, if possible.
Yeah, easy, or easy said, harder done. But it's definitely, it's the next business school. It's truly a replacement of the traditional 2-year full-time MBA. It just doesn't make any sense if you want to work in tech. It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, it makes sense if you are in a top-tier school and you want to work in consulting or in finance. But today, if you look at that, like at least 1/3 of the students want to work in tech. And there's not such a single class in a 2-year full-time program that is teaching them anything about tech. So I really want to be part of the solution. I've been part of the problem. I went through that system and I've been trying to fix it. And I know it's a big vision and it's a big opportunity, but I also like to start small, because at the end of the day, it's about people. And it's Sonia, my first student, Daniel, the lawyer who became a PM, and many others in between. So it's really, how can you make sure that as you scale, you keep that quality and that level of service that makes us so unique? So that's where I spend a lot of my time as well. part of it is recruiting internally. Part of it is also communities. It's really being in touch with the key instructors and speakers that contribute to our community, the key alumni who are success cases for us, and they really represent us very well. So really how to make people successful. At the end of the day, I say that our success is our students' success, and we need to be aligned on those expectations.
That's great. And, obviously I think one thing I wanted to give you props for is kind of how engaged you are within the community, right? I think especially on LinkedIn, for those who follow Carlos, you'll see he's always actively like posting content, engaging with content. He really is like an ambassador for product school, but also like immersing yourself in those conversations with folks about product management. I think that's really cool. Obviously, you have a lot of other things on your plate, but, I think to kind of see, leadership engaging those conversations, really paying it forward to the community is really great to see. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you. I think it's a way to send a message about what's really important to you. I always say that busy people always find time to what matters to them.
Right.
And for me, community, it's critical. Like we started Product School not just as an education institution. We are a community first. We are over 1 million members, and over 90% of our resources are absolutely free. And it will always be free. So we have 1,000 events per year, 6 conferences per year, books, discussion forums, you mentioned social media, and so many other things, a jobs board where there are companies actively hiring. All the things that I just described are absolutely free. And I'm very proud of that. And I want to give back as much as possible, because I believe that the more people get value, the more people will want to potentially take that next step.
Got it. No, I think those are spoken in the true words of a product leader right there, I would say. The last 2 questions I have, I think the first one is a very, very broad, but it'd be great to get your thoughts on, kind of where do you see the field of product management kind of heading? I think we talked about it briefly, but kind of, if you were to kind of simulate, let's say, maybe 2-3 years from now, even like 5 years, kind of, where do you see kind of the scope of product management evolving or kind of adapting, to the remote work as well as, kind of just technology as a whole?
Yeah, well, I'm bullish. Obviously, I think there's never been a better time to build digital products. Everyone is online. A lot of stores are closed. The bigger the number of technology and products that we use on a daily basis, the bigger the need it is for product managers, because we are the ones who are kind of creating the future and leading that transformation. So it's a critical time, and we need more and more people who get into not just tech, because for me, product management goes beyond tech. Yes, it's true that it started in high-tech companies in tech hubs, but if you think about it, any company out there, let's put a bank as an example.
Sure.
They are using a lot of software internally to collaborate, externally to offer their products. And would you consider that tech company? Maybe not. But in reality, every single company these days is using technology, hence they need more and more product people.
Definitely. No, I think it's also what I've learned too, kind of, again, being relatively new to the field. It's kind of a mindset. I think, for example, like to use before, it's like, okay, I'm using a tool like Google or Facebook. Now it's like, I wonder why they placed a button or kind of certain feature the way it is. Why is it a certain color? I think the curiosity is just endless, I think, which is really cool. I'm sure others feel the same way about that. So I definitely agree. I think it's a mindset as well as, technology is just immersed in our lives. I don't think you can separate human from technology. I think, we rely on technology for everything. So it's interesting to kind of see how, product leaders can continue to drive that innovation forward. And then, ultimately, Carlos, the final question we wrap up as we conclude our first episode of season 2, folks, is what ultimately brings out your A game, Carlos? Or in other words, what allows Carlos to be the best version of Carlos?
I love creating things. I'm a product person at heart. So I need to be in an environment where I can create, and I can be with positive people that also want to co-create with me. I'm an optimist. So I believe that you want to be with people that bring you up and allow you to really double down on your talent. And that is what brings my A game. What brings my anti-A game is when I need to be, doing things, following a specific process, because I feel like I'm not adding enough value. I think where I can add the most value is kind of creating what doesn't exist yet, and be with risk takers that also want to kind of take that journey with me.
That's awesome. Hey, at A Game, we support that. And I guess the other question for you is, kind of, Carlos, where can people find you? I know like you're very active on LinkedIn, where else can people kind of connect with yourself, as well as, get plugged into kind of all the great things that Product School is doing?
Yeah, I'm very active on social media, especially on LinkedIn. So for anyone who wants to learn more about product or simply just chat with me, ping me, because I'll do my very best to answer. And then if you want to learn more about product as well and consume some of our free resources, just check out our website, productschool.com.
Awesome. Well, again, Carlos, it was a pleasure. I'm sure I personally got a lot of it, and I'm sure our audience will be getting a lot out of it soon. So yeah, thank you guys. This is a wrap for episode 1 of season 2 of A Game Talks. It's your boy Adi, and we're signing off.